Let's talk about something most men spend their entire lives misunderstanding. It's the puzzle of attraction, of connection, of sparking that elusive feeling of genuine desire. The common belief, the one that causes endless frustration, is that this is a game of external maneuvers. A better line delivered at the perfect moment, a bolder touch, a more impressive story, a relentless pursuit fueled by sheer effort. So men adjust these external pieces, their opening line, their wardrobe, their planned topics of conversation. They fine-tune the performance. And yet, so often, they hit a wall. The initial interest fades instead of deepening. The connection feels transactional. Real, magnetic desire just doesn't appear. It feels like following a recipe, but the cake never rises. Why? Because the fundamental premise is wrong. Female desire, human desire at its core, does not primarily respond to a sequence of actions. It responds to the mental and emotional state those actions originate from. It's not about the words you say. It's about the psychological reality you inhabit while you speak. Evolutionary psychology gives us a clear lens here. Throughout human history, attraction wasn't about responding to a direct pitch. It was a deep, instinctive evaluation of consistent signals. Signals of stability, of direction, of internal resourcefulness. The unconscious mind, and yes, the body itself, evaluates. Who here governs their own internal world? Who occupies space not because they're demanding it, but because it's their natural right? Who reacts to the environment from a place of choice, not from a place of panic? This changes everything. It means what matters is not what you do once to impress. It's what you consistently represent through your behavior. This is why memorized lines almost always fall flat. This is why physical appearance alone can capture attention, but cannot sustain true attraction. And this is why direct, obvious, trying, often creates the opposite of its intended effect. It repels. The mind is not aroused by effort. It's aroused by reading. It reads your posture for tension or ease. It reads the rhythm of your speech for anxiety or calm. It reads your emotional responses for stability or volatility. When a man is trying to seduce, he places himself in a position of pursuit, of seeking validation. When a man simply sustains a certain grounded state, he is subconsciously interpreted as a viable choice. The secret, then, was never a hidden trick or a single magic phrase. It is a continuous behavioral state, an alignment between your mind, your body, and your emotional core that remains consistent, even when you're not saying a word. Few men operate from this place because it doesn't require momentary courage. It requires internal consistency. And true internal consistency is rare. It's the product of self-mastery, of social awareness, and of emotional sovereignty. In our time together today, we're going to deconstruct the exact mechanism that allows the human brain, specifically the female brain in the context of romantic attraction, to reinterpret you. Not as just a pleasant person, not as a friendly face, but as an authentically attractive, sexually relevant presence. This mechanism doesn't depend on your ability to impress or convince. It depends on your ability to sustain the right internal state long enough for instinct, biology, and psychology to do the rest. When this alignment happens, desire doesn't need to be begged for or manufactured. It emerges as a natural, organic response to what you have come to represent. And before we dive into the first layer of this, if this perspective resonates with you, if you're tired of performance and interested in principle, then do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel. Every week, we break down these nuanced aspects of psychology, social dynamics, and modern masculinity. Your subscription helps build this community of men seeking deeper understanding over quick fixes. And hit that like button if what I've said so far makes sense to you. It tells the algorithm this is valuable, helping others find this material. Technique 1. The psychology of being the chooser, not the pursuer. There is a brutal, unspoken difference between two men walking into a room. The first man enters wanting, above all, to be accepted. His energy is one of subtle petition. The second man enters with the quiet assumption of evaluating whether the environment and the people in it are worth his time and attention. This difference is never announced. It's transmitted. It's felt in the atmosphere around them. This is what Robert Greene, in his work on power and human nature, touches upon. The person who appears to be in a position of choice, who is observing and discerning, automatically occupies a higher place in the unseen psychological hierarchy. This isn't about arrogance or looking down on others. It is, purely and simply, an absence of desperate need. And the human nervous system is exquisitely calibrated to detect neediness or its absence, often in less than a second. When you psychologically position yourself as a candidate, everything about you begins to communicate pursuit. Your body might lean forward too eagerly. The rhythm of your speech might accelerate, trying to pack in as much value as possible. Your words, consciously or not, aim to convince and persuade. You are, in essence, auditioning. The man who positions himself as a filter operates differently. He maintains his own axis. His energy doesn't shift drastically when he enters a new social space. He doesn't immediately adapt himself to fit in. He observes. He measures. He decides. This silent, internal posture immediately shifts how he is instinctually perceived. Research from institutions like Princeton shows us that judgments of competence, trustworthiness, and yes, even dominance, are made in fractions of a second, long before any substantive verbal exchange. The decision-making process about your social value begins before the first word of real conversation. So this first technique has almost nothing to do with what you say. Speech comes after your psychological positioning. It has everything to do with how you occupy social space. It's in the way you enter a room without haste. It's in maintaining an open, stable, and relaxed posture. It's in your gaze, looking at your surroundings, and at people, not to seek permission, but to simply take in information. Your verbal opening then becomes an extension of this. You ask selective, curious questions not to present yourself, but to engage your own discernment. You are filtering, and discernment, when it's authentic, communicates inherent value. Value, in turn, awakens curiosity. And curiosity is the undeniable first spark of all desire. Here's a subtle, powerful detail almost no one applies. You end the interaction when you decide, not when the topic runs out. Most conversations drag until the energy naturally deflates. By consciously, politely choosing to pause the interaction while interest is still present. It was great talking to you. I need to head over here. You achieve two things. You break the unconscious pattern of neediness, the pattern of consuming all available attention, and you establish control of the social rhythm. The instinctive brain reads this control of rhythm as a form of calm leadership. And leadership is biologically and deeply associated with the capacities for protection and direction, triggers that are ancient, powerful, and difficult for the subconscious to ignore. The result of this technique is silent but transformative. You cease to be interpreted as someone seeking acceptance. You begin to be read as a source of value. Not because you gave a brilliant monologue, but because you demonstrated, through your behavior, that you didn't need to. When a man occupies the position of the chooser, the social environment subtly begins to reorganize around him. And when that environment reorganizes, desire finds the space it needs to emerge, all on its own. Pause for a moment, allowing the concept to settle. This is deep, foundational work. It's not about pretending. It's about cultivating a genuine internal center. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, share this video with a friend who you think would benefit from this mindset shift. Real growth happens in communities, not in isolation. Drop a comment below too. Let me know if you've ever felt that shift, that difference between pursuing and being perceived as a choice. Technique 2. Cognitive tension, the fuel of curiosity and ambiguity. Now, let's move to the engine of sustained attraction. Few men understand a critical paradox. Desire does not grow when everything is perfectly clear, explained, and laid bare. It grows in the soil of what is unresolved. The pioneering psychologist Carl Jung spoke of psychic energy, libido in its broadest sense, as always moving toward what is unfinished, toward what demands interpretation, toward the mystery that asks to be solved. The mind is not aroused when it receives everything prepackaged and explained. It is aroused when it needs to decipher, when it needs to connect dots, to read between the lines, to imagine possibilities. Something is left intriguingly suspended in the air. The common, catastrophic mistake is confusing clarity with attraction. A man believes that by showing all his interest early, by making his intentions completely explicit, he is creating security and comfort. What he is actually creating is closure. When a puzzle is solved, the mind relaxes. It moves on. And a mind that is completely relaxed is not a mind in a state of desire. Desire requires a specific kind of fuel, cognitive tension. That subtle, low-grade current of curiosity that keeps the mind actively engaged even after an interaction has ended. Science backs this. Studies in social psychology show that controlled, positive ambiguity increases dopamine. Dopaminergic activity in the brain. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of wanting, of seeking, of anticipation, does not fire up in response to the wholly predictable. It responds to the contrast between expectation and reality, to the potential of reward, to what is not yet fully resolved. When you give answers that are too complete, when you confess excessive interest too early, when you explain your entire emotional state prematurely, you are closing the neurological circuit before it has time to strengthen. You're giving away the entire book on the first date. There's no reason to keep turning the pages. Desire simply doesn't have the time or space to grow roots. Now, let's be perfectly clear. This technique has nothing to do with playing games, with being dishonest, or with creating emotional confusion. That is manipulation, and it's easily detected. What we're discussing requires far more precision and authenticity. It is about incomplete but confident answers. It is about a firm, present focus that alternates naturally with brief, unanxious withdrawals of that focus. Not to punish, but to allow the other person's mind to engage, to come toward you. It's about being present and engaged, but not invasive or overwhelming. You are not hiding. You are not running. You are simply not giving everything away at once out of a sense of anxiety. Notice how this changes the dynamic. Instead of her feeling the pressure of your full, undiluted attention from the start, she begins to think after the interaction. She replays a clever phrase you used. She wonders about a brief, confident silence you held. She fills in the gaps you consciously left open with her own imagination. And the more her mind works in this positive, curious way, the more her emotional and physical responses follow. Desire is built in this internal, imaginative space you allowed her to have. It's not about saying less for the sake of being quiet. It's about saying enough to awaken interest, but not so much that you satisfy it completely in one sitting. The practical application is an exercise in calm. It is not confirming romantic interest verbally before a natural, nonverbal foundation has been built. It is not rushing to define the relationship out of your own anxiety for closure. It is sustaining a comfortable presence without the needy need for immediate resolution. When you master this gentle, respectful cognitive tension, the entire dance of attraction stops being a series of explicit verbal exchanges and becomes a psychological engagement. And the psychological dimension is always deeper and more potent than the obvious, surface-level game. This is precisely where most men fail, because this nuance is rarely discussed openly. It's the bridge between basic social skills and generating genuine, magnetic attraction. If you're committed to learning these bridges, to moving from theory to fluid practice, then make sure you've subscribed. We go much deeper in dedicated follow-up videos, breaking down real-world scenarios and subtle behaviors. Technique 3. Visible emotional mastery, the ultimate trigger. We arrive now at what might be the most powerful signal of all. There is a moment in almost every meaningful interaction, especially as attraction builds, where the environment or the person you're with will subtly test your center. It might be a sideways comment, a playful provocation, an unexpected, slightly prolonged silence, a moment of minor social friction or awkwardness. It is at this precise point that nearly everything is decided, not by the witty comeback you have stored up, but by who maintains sovereign control over their internal state. Think of the most magnetic people you've known. They aren't necessarily the loudest or the funniest in every moment. They are the ones who seem unshakably centered. As writers and philosophers have noted for centuries, true power begins with governing oneself before attempting to govern anything in the external world. Desire, on a very fundamental level, is sparked by witnessing this kind of internal sovereignty. It doesn't need to be announced. It's evident in composure. The female physiology, tuned by evolution, interprets this calm emotional control as a direct signal of a capacity for stable leadership and protection. This isn't a moral judgment. It's a biological heuristic. Research from universities like California has linked visible self-regulation and emotional stability directly to the subconscious perception of higher status and reliability. When your emotions do not hijack your behavior, when external stimuli do not disorganize your internal world, you communicate something profound without uttering a word. The environment does not command me. My reactions are my choices. This reading happens in an instant, and it goes deep. The common, reflexive mistake is what I call fixing the mood. The man feels a spike of social tension, a lull, a challenging question, and he rushes to relieve it. He overexplains. He laughs nervously at his own expense. He changes his tone to become overly accommodating. He tries to smooth things over immediately. All of these behaviors, however well-intentioned, broadcast anxiety. And anxiety broadcasts a loss of internal control. That perception of lost control is, quite literally, a desire killer. It tells the instinctive brain, this person is not a stable source of safety. Visible emotional mastery is not emotional suppression or coldness. It is stability under pressure. It is the capacity to feel the tension, because you're human, and yet consciously choose to sustain your own calm rhythm, your own grounded tone. You don't ignore the tension, you simply don't allow it to derail you. In practice, this is simple to understand and difficult to embody. It means not reacting immediately to every emotional or social stimulus. Keeping a stable, warm tone of voice even when the topic becomes charged. Not rushing to resolve, explain, or defuse a moment the very second it arises. Having the strength to simply sustain the atmosphere, even if it's momentarily uncomfortable, without fleeing from it into chatter or approval seeking. When you do this, something profound shifts in the dynamic. The other person's unconscious expectation of a reactive, needy response is not confirmed. Their subtle test, which is often not even a conscious test, loses all its power because it finds no resistance, only absorption. Their entire subconscious reading of you begins to adjust in real time. This is perhaps the most potent sexual trigger because it signals deep, earned maturity. Not performative alpha confidence, but the quiet confidence of a man who has encountered his own difficult emotions before and did not lose himself to them. He knows he can navigate this moment, too. The man who sustains visible emotional mastery creates an invisible field of instinctive safety. He communicates, around me, you don't have to manage the emotional chaos of another person. You can relax. And in that space of relaxation born of true safety, not boredom, desire finds the ultimate permission to surface and express itself. Few men master this because it is not an acting skill. It is internal training. It requires cultivating inner silence, not just faster comebacks. It requires a fundamental friendship with yourself. But when this mastery begins to appear naturally, the effect is immediate and transformative. You stop being merely interesting or entertaining. You become solid. And solidity, at the instinctual level, is one of the deepest, most irresistible foundations of true attraction. So, let's bring this all together. The hidden mechanism, the core truth, is not about learning to seduce better. It is about learning to sustain the right internal state. After examining these patterns, the psychology of the chooser, the engine of cognitive tension, the power of emotional mastery, one overarching truth presents itself with clarity. Human desire, particularly female desire in the romantic context, is not born from direct attempts to generate it. It is born from instinctive interpretation. The brain does not respond to a checklist of isolated moves. It responds to a continuous coherence between who you are, how you position yourself, how you manage uncertainty, and how you govern your emotional world. As evolutionary psychologists like David Buss have outlined, attraction is an adaptive response to consistent, reliable signals of value and stability, not to periodic, high-pressure performances. When these signals align authentically in your behavior, desire appears without being summoned, chased, or begged for. This is why techniques only ever work when they cease to look like techniques at all. Positioning as the chooser is not a social trick. It is your identity in action, a man who knows his own worth and exercises discernment. Cognitive tension is not forced mystery. It is the natural consequence of someone who is complete in themselves and doesn't give all their energy away out of anxiety. Visible emotional mastery is not cold indifference. It is mature, grounded stability under social or interpersonal pressure. When these three layers become your natural behavioral baseline, a fundamental shift occurs. The man stops trying to be seductive. He starts being perceived as seductive by the very nature of his presence. See the convergence? The man who chooses sets a calm, self-directed rhythm. The man who sustains a healthy degree of the unresolved keeps curiosity and anticipation alive. The man who governs his emotions creates a profound, instinctive sense of safety and reliability. Together, these forces compel the brain to reinterpret you, not as a nice guy, not as a fun time, but as a sexually relevant, viable partner. Not because of your effort, but because of your state. Men who master this internal landscape do not chase validation. They do not rush processes to soothe their own anxiety. They do not frantically try to fix the emotional atmosphere of every interaction. They remain whole, centered, and consistent. And the social environment, sensing this wholeness, naturally adjusts around them. It is within that adjusted, calibrated space that genuine desire finds the fertile ground it needs to grow, powerfully and on its own. This is the ultimate difference between those who force interest through action and those who awaken attraction through being. It is the journey from performance to presence. This journey from fragmented action to cohesive being is exactly what we are dedicated to on this channel. It's a structured path away from canned lines and empty shortcuts, and toward a real, principled understanding of desire psychology, behavioral dynamics, and authentic masculine presence. If you want more of this, if you want to move from understanding these concepts to embodying them with clarity and calm advantage, then your next steps are clear. First, like this video if it provided you with a new lens to see your interactions. Second, subscribe to the channel. We are building a library of in-depth content designed for men who seek mastery over manipulation. And third, comment below. Let's start a conversation. What was your biggest takeaway? Which of these three layers, chooser psychology, cognitive tension, or emotional mastery, do you think is most missing in the modern approach to dating? Some men will continue to spend their lives adjusting external actions, hoping the next tactic will be the key. Others will understand that the key was never outside. It is in cultivating and sustaining the right internal state and letting human instinct do the rest. The difference between these two paths defines everything. It defines who chases and who is effortlessly, authentically chosen. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll see you in the next video.